Who's aware of the Sustainable Development Goals? 2 hands. Shame that this is the plan to save the planet's problems, isn't it? And 2 people in a room of people who are engaged with it know about it. That's a real shame. And it's something we've got to deal with. Because Goal 11 relates to sustainable cities. That's what this whole event is about. Engineers are genuinely interested in this for lots of reasons. One, because that's where they'll make some money. Be under no illusions, business drives business. Secondly, and probably most importantly, we are all going to live in urban environments. By 2030, it's estimated that 75% of the population of the planet will live in an urban environment. That's a lot of people living in towns and cities with infrastructure that was designed to cope with populations far smaller than in those cities. And part of this is not around building new stuff. There is an obsession that we build new stuff. And when you listen around subjects such as housing, do we really have a housing crisis? I fully accept that we don't have enough people living in a home that they would like to choose. But do we need to build? Do we need to develop the green belt? Do we need to develop brown infrastructure? The question that we need to be posing here around sustainable cities is, can we apply engineering solutions and think about this in a different way? There was a report about 3 months ago that said if you found every property in the UK that currently has nobody living in it, you don't need to build any new homes. Now, whether that's true or not is not the point. What we do need to do, however, is look at how we make that sustainable in terms of the infrastructure we provide. And engineers provide that infrastructure. But what is infrastructure? The way I describe it is it's the stuff in and under the street. Road, rail, transport, communications, water, power. It's the stuff you don't see, but it's the stuff, quite frankly, none of us could live the lives that we lead without infrastructure. In fact, the only time we notice it is when it goes wrong. Who came by train? Most of you, because we're here. Was it easy? Relatively. Was it on time? Big no, not a chance. Who drove? No one. Oh, well done. You were brave. You were brave. And yet, we decide that we will build stuff where there's space because there's space. Not because it's necessarily sustainable, not because it adds value, and not because we're thinking about the user. We build stuff because stuff, we think, needs to be built. And the whole purpose around the UN Sustainability Goals is to challenge our thinking so that we can look at this world in a very different way. It's not just about living better, it's about planning better, designing better, and then operating and maintaining better. I am very proud of the fact that engineers are at the heart of that. What we as a community need to do is understand the impact that we want on the planet and the type of environment we wish to live in, and then we manage it accordingly. There are a whole series of tools that are available to us to enable that to happen, and you'll hear about some of those in a moment. But what can we do as individuals on a daily basis? Well, there are some practical things, and most of you, I'm hoping, are doing them. You think about how much you travel, you think about your recycling and your waste management, you think about and use energy-saving light bulbs. But you also, and because you are here, you're an engaging audience and you are an engaging part of the conversation. And that's what the institution does. It brings people together. It facilitates, convenes, and curates knowledge so that we can make the changes that we need to make to deliver the planet that the younger generation in the audience, and my children, want to be able to live in. How? Little pitch. So in October this year, we are running a global engineering congress at 1 Great George Street in London, all about the Sustainable Development Goals. I would implore you to look at coming. Why? Because we're turning knowledge into action. There's enough talk. We actually know, in most cases, what the problem is. And actually, if you look around here and you listen to some of the other activities that have been going on, we actually have most of the solutions available today. So at least take the first step. What we are failing to do is take the first step. So the GEC, the Global Engineering Congress, is about making that happen. 90 countries coming here and online to start to engage with the subject matter. So as you think about the Sustainable Development Goals, and you think about sustainable cities, think about the world in which you want to live, think about how you can create that world, and then think about how you interact with that world. And if we understand this from a user perspective, the causal link will come back that we will end up designing, developing, and delivering infrastructure in a way that is sustainable, long-term, and effective. It will also be far easier to manage, will have been designed with sustainability at its heart, and managed accordingly. So a bit of an opening gambit before we bring on the team to talk through what's going on today as part of those solutions that I would implore you all to engage with. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Ian Nicholson. I'm, it says there, Commercial Director for CEEQUAL. Actually, we're part of the BRE group. CEEQUAL is part of the BREEAM family of schemes, and I'm now, as of the end of last week, Director for Infrastructure in BRE. So how many people have heard of CEEQUAL? I'm going to repeat a few more than Nathan got in his introduction. That's great. So I'm going to focus specifically on the civil engineering elements of contributing to more sustainable living in our cities. So I'm not going to talk about the housing side of things. I have other colleagues in BRE who are much more educated and have leading thoughts on that area. I'm going to talk specifically about the infrastructure world and our role as civil engineers. So let's just say, what is sustainable living? What do we mean? Well, it's about balancing what's often called the triple bottom line, the environmental, social and economic elements of our lives. And lots of people draw it as a traditional Venn diagram. I specifically draw it like this because we have an overarching challenge. We have one planet. If we live beyond our means in this planet, we don't have a society or an economy. So if we need to look after the planet as a key criteria, because if we destroy the planet and our life support system, then it's pointless focusing on economics and society, because we won't be here. The challenge we have at the moment, there's all sorts of statistics around, but one of the key ones is if everybody in the UK, if everybody in the world lived as we did in the UK, we need 3.5 planets worth of resources. Okay? Clearly, we only have the one. So we're over-consuming in all aspects of our lives. So that is the challenge, getting down to one planet living. So where do we sit as a civil engineering sector in that challenge? If you read the media over the years and over the decades that I've worked in civil engineering, the media will make us all out to be environmental criminals. All we ever do is go around destroying the environment for putting concrete down, blacktop down, whatever. And yeah, we have to acknowledge there are impacts to what we do and what we deliver, but we have to look at that much bigger picture. And I'm really proud to be a civil engineer because we have a unique role in the world. One, getting ourselves more efficient, so we reduce the impacts that we create. But as Nathan was saying, we have the ability to deliver infrastructure and solutions that enables every citizen in the world to live more sustainably. We have an impact on how they can reduce or increase their own personal impact through how they live. So we have a unique role in delivering more sustainable living. So we really are the heart of the challenge. So CEEQUAL, I'm going to get a bit more practical and talk a little bit about case studies. CEEQUAL was born in the Institution of Civil Engineers back in the year 2000. It was a research project born by industry who wanted to make civil engineering more sustainable. How do we improve the performance of civil engineering in sustainability terms? And out of that research project, we developed an award scheme. So to help civil engineers improve sustainability, there's this carrot of getting an award, considering lots of factors around sustainability in how they design projects and deliver projects. But that's only one part of it. The real learning and value add of a scheme like CEEQUAL is the learning that comes from it. It's how you improve, both in the project you're working on, but also how you learn from the bits you didn't do very well in a project, how you learn from those to make sure you do it better next time. So it's that ongoing embedded learning that's really important. So whilst it's an award scheme, it's an influencing tool. We strongly encourage teams to pick up our question set and framework at the beginning of a project in feasibility stage, because you can then start to challenge the norms, the status quo of how we design things. Okay, so that we can change things and improve and deliver more sustainable living right from the start of a project. So it's a team-based self-assessment, so the project team work on it and it gets independently verified on the basis of evidence from project records about what's been achieved. And it's these two bits at the bottom that give the rigor of the award. Okay? You can see here the topics that get covered. Okay, so 3 through to 9 are very focused on the social and environmental elements of sustainability. How are we delivering resources? What are our impacts and enhancements on ecology and the water environment, historic environment? And then lots of things as well around the social environment in terms of impact on people and communities, landscape, transport and the like as well. I'm going to talk a bit about project strategy because out of those chapters there, we address 2 fundamental elements in civil engineering in delivering sustainable infrastructure. Chapters 2 through to 9 focus on improving performance. How well are we minimizing the impact of what we're doing? So that might be reducing the negatives, waste generation, material use, for instance, but also how are we delivering enhancements? How are we improving air quality as a result of the project? How are we improving biodiversity around the project as a result of what we're doing? So that's focused on what we deliver through the project. That is really only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to sustainable living. The real challenge is this bottom piece here. Are we delivering the right project? Okay, is the solution that we're designing and building actually going to help the community that project serves, whether it's a road, a railway, water, wastewater treatment, whatever it might be? Is it helping the community live more sustainably? Is it reducing that community's impact on the environment? And I'm going to dig into this now and just illustrate those 2 elements with a few case studies. So first of all, delivering the project well, the top half of that flow diagram. Here's a couple of CEEQUAL projects that I think illustrate quite well how we might change how we think in delivering a project. So, relatively mundane piece of infrastructure, stabilising an embankment on the London Underground network. Okay, it's in outer London, Snaresbrook, which is northwest London, I think. So it's part of the overground element of the underground, if you get what I mean. But some really interesting things that they did here. It'd be so easy, embankment stabilisation. if all we're doing as civil engineers is thinking about function, well, we'll go through, clear all the vegetation so we get a clear run at the embankment and the soil so that we can actually do the structural things we need to do. No, that's not what this project team did. They actually went and redesigned how they were going to do the project with the objective of retaining as many trees as possible. Okay? So retaining that natural environment. So they redesigned it, changed the scaffolding design in terms of temporary works to get in there to do the work safely. So through that redesign, they avoided the tree removal. Not only that, so much of our railway engineering works goes on overnight because it's the only time you can get safe access to the network. They delivered a solution in this design as well that avoided the need to shut the network. That meant they avoided the need for night working. What does that mean? Less disruption to the community. That removes the need to have to rehouse people for a number of nights while they do the work. Some serious environmental and sustainability benefits there just by thinking differently about what they were designing. As well, delayed the project to suit the calendar of the reproduction for birds by avoiding nesting periods, and kept the community informed about what was going on. In my experience in projects, complaints from community come from people just not knowing what's going on. If you just get proactive and tell them what's going on, they don't get surprised when something noisy suddenly happens or their house suddenly starts vibrating from a pile driver. If they know it's going to happen, chances are you won't get a complaint. Doesn't mean to say they're happy, but they understand what's happening. Another example, Truro Park and Ride, a car park on the outside of a town. So easy just to go in, clear the site, blacktop, white lines, and you've got a car park. They went the extra, I would say, not mile, extra 2 or 3 miles here. And you look at just some of the numbers here around landscaping and ecological enhancements that they delivered as part of this project. So new native woodland, new meadowland, thousands of trees and shrubs. And then they looked at the transport, park and ride scheme. So what's happening with the buses and the transportation into the town centre? So they looked for innovation in that as well. Again, they thought differently, outside the box. So just 2 really simple, mundane civil engineering projects where, with a bit of thought, thinking about sustainability, and with our question set at the front end of the project, you can do something differently if you open your mind. Now let's get on to the real fundamental here. How do we go about delivering the right project? Now, my first example is theoretical, because it's not a CEEQUAL assessment, and I don't want to get into the politics of where we put a third runway, okay, an extra runway at Heathrow. But it's a great example about how we think about what the solutions are. So, if we think about Heathrow, how do we define the problem? It seems to me that at the moment it's being discussed as an airport that's at capacity. Heathrow's full. How do we solve that? Because Heathrow is full, it needs more air capacity. Solution becomes a new runway with all the environmental and social impacts that will create. Is that really the problem? Is the problem that we're trying to solve here actually that London, or maybe it's even the southeast of England, needs more air capacity? Because if you redefine the problem, think about it differently, well actually, there's a number of solutions here, because if you think about the southeast of England, you've got 4 main airports. Yes, I know there's London City as well, but that's limited capacity. Just think about the 4 main airports. Yeah, you've got one that's at capacity, but the other 3 have got spare capacity to differing degrees. So, what's the solution if we define it that way? Is it a new runway at Heathrow? Or is it about getting much better transport connections, something like high-speed rail, if you want to get really futuristic Hyperloop, connecting these airports so that it's much easier for passengers to transfer between them. So actually, for a hub, you don't necessarily need one airport, you can use multiple airports because the transportation between them is that quick. Okay? Is it that, or is it building a new airport in the Thames estuary? Okay? And I know Boris Johnson, when he was mayor, had put all his focus on that. And I don't want to talk about Boris Island, as it was coined. I want to talk about another one, another proposal that was put out by Halcro, now CH2M, and a couple of other organisations whose names I temporarily forget. But they talked about a Thames hub, a separate airport in the estuary, in the Thames estuary. But there's some critical things about this that, to me, really show innovation in how we solve project problems. So yeah, fundamentally, we're talking about needing more air capacity, a new airport. But their location on it was such that it was on a neat line on HS1. So you'd immediately got high-speed rail connection through Eurostar and that line through the Channel Tunnel into central London. So you'd immediately got high-speed rail connection. Okay, all it needed was a short loop off it to bring things in. It gave lots of scope for renewable energy generation, which you would struggle with elsewhere. And also, taking the blinkers right off, we're acknowledging that there's another major infrastructure challenge in London, and that's the Thames Barrier. By 2100, with climate change predictions, the Thames Barrier is going to need redesigning because it's not going to be high enough to cope with the biggest surges. So actually, we need to put in a crossing, a tunnel under the Thames to get to this estuary airport. Well, let's design it smartly so that we create a new flood barrier in it, solving two problems at once. Not only that, they thought about tidal energy, putting a tidal barrage in there, so there's renewable energy in that proposal as well. So all of a sudden, we're not just solving one problem here, we've got one project scope delivering at three, at least, key challenges that we've got here in London. And that, to me, is where we need to get to in our thinking around feasibility and how we scope projects. Okay? We've got to get the blinkers off and ask the question, what is the problem we're trying to solve? And keep asking that question until we get all these different permutations there, so we actually get to the root cause and solve the right thing. And for some projects, that means not building anything at all, because actually you can just adapt what's already there. So a couple of other quick case studies just to round off, and then I'll take some questions. In terms of a couple of projects that have tackled this, are we delivering the right project? A58 Blackbrook diversion. This is up in the northwest of England. So we've got a village, Blackbrook, getting heavily congested. And for them, the solution of bypassing the A58 around that village, reduced traffic in the village, provide improved access to St Helens, a town further on from Blackbrook. So this road is going from the M6 through to St Helens. So that delivered economic benefits around economic regeneration. But there was a huge focus as well on the natural environment again. So creating new wetlands and grassland, creating new wildlife habitats, as well as amenity features for the community. So this became a new public space for the village to go and enjoy. So solving problems, yes, we're using resources, creating blacktop and concrete and things for a new road, but the societal benefits for that were massive. Another one, again up in the northwest, a project called the A6 Manchester Airport Relief Road. Now, if anybody's ever tried getting to Manchester Airport from the south, it's always been a real challenge because across the south of Manchester, there's no direct east-west links. There's no obvious route. So everybody is going through suburban areas using relatively minor roads, getting through there. So there's a project here that's delivered all sorts of benefits through finding a route, which lots of people will sort of say, hang on a minute, a new road to an airport, that's not sensible, is it? Well, maybe, maybe not. But when you think about the benefits that it's delivered for this community in terms of removing traffic out of urban areas, so improving safety, reducing air pollution, improving journey times for people, so it's not just people going to the airport, it gets you across to the M56 and across into Cheshire as well. So it improves transportation journey times, so it improves economic regeneration as well as the societal benefits. So again, how are we solving the problem? Are we finding the right solution and the right route to improve everything? So just some quick examples there to get you thinking about our role as civil engineers in more sustainable living. And apart from that Heathrow example, which I was using to illustrate the challenges we have, they've all used CEEQUAL to help think about those challenges. Okay, so our question set addresses both the improving performance, but challenging the rationale for the project in the first place. Are we delivering the right project? So thank you very much. Happy to take any questions. We've got about 5 minutes, I think, 3 or 4 minutes. So thank you very much.
Does CEEQUAL stand for anything?
It used to stand for the Civil Engineering Environmental Quality Scheme, but we've advanced the content from just being about environment to much broader sustainability. Hi, there's a microphone coming over to you. I'll not stand a chance of hearing you from there without it.
Could I ask, do you think Hinkley Point is the right project?
Who knows? I think there's so many different angles to that. One of the things that I should say about CEEQUAL is we don't take a view on whether it's the right project in that respect. We take a view that if it gets legal planning approval, then fine. And CEEQUAL is a tool to help the project team to deliver that in the most sustainable way. I think from a personal perspective, you have to get down into, well, we've got an energy challenge. Nuclear, is it the best solution? No, but it's a pretty good solution at reducing carbon. So if you just look at the timelines for reducing carbon intensity, I think nuclear must have a place in the short term. Is it the long-term solution? No, absolutely not. But I think the longer our government holds off on policy around renewables and things, then the more crucial it probably becomes to invest in nuclear. It's not ideal, but I think that's where we are, and just being really pragmatic about it. Thank you very much. I hope you found that useful.